Episode 32, The Best of 2022, Part 3. Originally written October 12, 2022. So here we are. It's that time of year again where I stop and revisit my ever-changing list of my favorite toy purchases of 2022. So if you are new to the channel and are wondering why I'm making up my favorites list when there are still 3 more months until the end of the year, allow me to give you a little background on how things get done around here. At the end of every quarter of the year, I come up with a tentative list of my favorite purchases up to that point. I continue to do this 2 more times within the year, adding new toys to the list and in effect, pushing out previous entries. So in a way, this top 10 list is an in-progress exercise to give me a chance to go over and appreciate more of the stuff I get throughout the year before I finalize everything with a definitive top 10 list at the end of 2022. If you want to see how I got to this point, feel free to check out parts 1 and 2 on my website. I'll place the links to them in the description below. Unfortunately, they aren't in this channel as I did them before I started this whole Redux thing. So anyways, before we get to the list proper, here are some of my honorable mentions. Basically, stuff that I got that I really liked, but not enough for me to place them in my top 10. First up, NECA Movie Shredder. For the past couple years, I've been low-key building up a nice 1990 live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set. While I was pretty content with just the 4 turtles, Splinter and April, I came across this guy selling for half of its original price at a toy pop-up store in one of my local malls. So you know, it was meant to be. While initially I wasn't that big a fan of the live-action Shredder design, in hand this guy really won me over. At least enough for me to include him in this list. On the mainstream Transformers side, we have Legacy Cosmos and Studio Series 86 Ironhide. Now I know I sound like a broken record at this point, but when it comes to multiple versions through the years that don't quite hit the spot, these 2 characters have always been a source of frustration for me. Ever since his original toy, all the updated versions of Cosmos have been a little too thin and streamlined for my taste. I prefer a shorter, stumpier Cosmos, closer to his look in the original cartoon. And this Legacy version is the first one ever to give that to me. And I guess that's why for some inexplicable reason, this 3rd-tier character at best has become one of the most sought-after and overhyped mainline Transformers of the year. Fortunately, after an initial botched pre-order, I was able to source another one from Indonesia of all places. But hey, at least I got one. Now if you're talking about first-tier characters, it really boggles the mind that it's taken this long to get a really decent Ironhide toy. Is it perfect? Not at all, but at least both robot and van modes are pretty faithful to his cartoon design, without having to rely on parts farming like the Earthrise version or extreme ugly panel cuts like the classic Universe had. Even the official Masterpiece version of Ironhide has body proportion issues in my opinion. So yeah, this is the first one to finally give us a well-rounded Ironhide. Next up is on the third-party front with Fans Toys Outrider, their version of a Masterpiece Trailbreaker, and Robot Rose, a knockoff version of the Takara Masterpiece RC. For years I've been quite happy with my Trailbreaker from Mastermind Creations, but when the opportunity came to switch to a version from Fans Toys, it was kind of a no-brainer. As good as Courageous from MMC was, Fans Toys Outrider is simply sturdier, cleaner, and better engineered. Now for the most part, you can't really go wrong with almost anything from Fans Toys, unless of course you got their version of RC. Many collectors would probably agree that Rouge by Fans Toys is easily one of their worst releases. But as bad as it was still miles better than any RC alternative up to this point, at least in my opinion. In 2020 though, an official Masterpiece RC was released by Takara with mostly positive reviews. But collectors had one glaring issue with her chest. This knockoff version of that MPRC called Robot Rose fixes that problem. And at half the cost of the official one, this is one of those rare instances where I actually switched out my Fans Toys version for something else. Aside from being a slightly less finicky toy, I just think that this RC overall looks better in both modes. So that would be a definite upgrade in my book. The next honorable mention goes to the Black Series Figrin Dan and Nalan Chil. Aside from the main theme and the Imperial March, possibly one of the most iconic tunes from the Star Wars original trilogy would definitely be Mad at Me, the song performed by the Biff Figrin Dan and his band The Modal Nodes at the Mos Eisley Cantina. That tune just has a way of burrowing into your ear and never leaving. Anyway, as individual figures, I'll admit that Figrin Dan or Nalan Chil aren't the best, but given the multiple instrument options that they both came with, these guys were definitely not meant to be displayed on their own. While the actual number of band members is debatable, I settled for 6 to cover every type of instrument included, and even if they're all the same figure, together they're quite a fun sight jamming on my shelf. Now if only I could find some way to pipe in their song into my display on demand. Now on to Marvel Legends with Toad. Considering this guy is one of the original members of Magneto's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and overall one of the more recognizable mutant villains in the Marvel Universe, it's amazing it took Hasbro this long to finally release a modern and updated Toad. This has been a long time coming, 20 years to be exact, since the previous Marvel Legends Toad was released by Toy Biz. But as cliche as it sounds, this new Toad was definitely worth the wait. I just love how expressive this figure is, especially with his alternate head with the hyperextended tongue lashing out. Yes, it's basically filling out a checkbox at this point, but it's one big hell of a box. And for added points, any toy that can get my wife's attention is a definite plus. And for the final honorable mention, we have Super 7's Ultimates Bengali. It's taken a full 6 years since the first Masters of the Universe Classics compatible Thundercats figures were released in 2016. After the unfortunate premature demise of Mattel's Club Third Earth, Super 7 has finally given us the last 2 members that we needed to give us a complete Thundercats team. Okay, fine, we still need Snarf, but technically he's a sidekick. While the first cat will be covered later on in my list, Bengali, the white tiger-themed blacksmith, finds himself just outside of the top 10. Given that he isn't part of the original team and was an additional member added later on, his arrival is a little less exciting. Still, I wasn't expecting him to be released this soon, and so being able to complete my team earlier than I thought was a very, very, very pleasant surprise and a major collecting highlight for me in 2022. And that should cover it for all the honorable mentions. While there aren't that many new entries for the third quarter, a good number from the previous list were bumped off because I decided to split up some entries that I had originally lumped together into their own respective spots. So first, let's bid adieu to Rig and Tesla, Fans Toys masterpiece versions of Huffer and Perceptor respectively. The sleek Lahire, DX9's masterpiece version of the last night's Hot Rod. And finally, Recording Alliance and a pair of Crimson Wings, all from Deformation Space, their masterpiece versions of Blaster and the Seekers, Thundercracker and Skywarp. And so now, on to my updated top 10 list. Kicking things off are a pair of previous entries holding on to the last 2 spots of number 10 and 9 on my list. Super 7's Ultimates Bebop and Baxter. As far as Ultimates go, I'd say that these 2 are some of the best that Super 7 has done in my opinion. The only reason they fell this far in my list is that I'm not that much of a die-hard Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan, but these guys stick around based on their sculpt and presence alone. Between the 2, while Bebop is just huge and menacing, full of fun little details, Baxter takes the slight edge due to his very unique look and design. Next up, number 8 brings in the first new entry, Transformers Legacy Menasor. When Hasbro released a bunch of Transformer Combiner teams as part of their Combiner Wars line in 2015, most collectors like myself agreed that the Stunticons, and more specifically, their combined form of Menasor, was easily the worst of the bunch. And it seemed like the guys at Hasbro acknowledged that because as their first Combiner attempt for the new Legacy line, we get a much improved set of Stunticons and Menasor. While the individual Stunticons are a mixed bag, with Dragstrip and Motormaster as the best of the bunch, and the last released, Breakdown, as an unfortunate, almost straight-up lazy repaint of Wild Rider as the worst. The true gem of this set though, and rightfully so, is Menasor. This is in my opinion the best Combiner toy that Hasbro has ever made to date. Putting together all the Stunticons is pure fun with smart little gimmicks like auto-splitting of Deaden and Dragstrip to form the arms, and using Wild Rider and Breakdown to auto-fill in Menasor's shins. This time around, they smartly employed a technique that many third-party combiners have been using for quite some time now: parts forming. The main torso section of Menasor is a complete separate piece that is extracted from Motormaster's trailer. This gives this giant a dedicated lower torso and hip part for proper proportions and, more importantly, extreme stability. If Menasor is just the tip of the iceberg for more improved combiner sets to come, count me in. Super 7 fittingly gives us number 7 on the list with their Ultimates Vultureman. So as it turns out, after numerous delays, Super 7 would finally deliver in spades in 2022. Not only did they manage to give us all the missing Thundercats, they also pretty much finished up all the main baddies as well. Vultureman is the final member of the evil mutants, and I have to say, as cool as the cats are, I think it's the mutants who are the real stars of this line. Visually, they are just so much more interesting and have a lot more character, and Vultureman is no exception to this. As the resident machinist of the group, aside from a fantastic sculpt, this guy comes with a ton of fun accessories, including a small arsenal of guns, tools, goggles, and a deadly claw stick to top it all off. While he's not the best of the mutants, he comes pretty close, and he's definitely better than most of the other figures in the line. Falling a couple places to number 6 is the lone Marvel Legends figure on this list, Bonebreaker. Marvel Legends releases have surprisingly been quite slow this year, which is a good thing for the wallet, I guess. So aside from the honorably mentioned Toad, no other legend has come close to Bonebreaker in my book. Yes, he's probably as obscure as they come, but his unique half-man, half-tank design will certainly always stand out in a display. And then there's a cherry on top, his beautifully sculpted face bursting with maniacal and psychotic joy. We're just a few cyborgs away from completing the reverse in this collection. Never in a million years would I think that we'd be in this position. So keep them coming, Hasbro. Number 5 is Super 7's Ultimates Chitara. Okay, so this was easily one of my most anticipated toys of the year. And it's not just because she would finally complete the main Thundercats team. Like probably most boys who grew up in the 80s, Chitara was part of the triumvirate of my favorite childhood crushes. Who the other two are is a story for another time. Anyway, back to Chitara. She was actually supposed to arrive late last year, but Super 7 found the initial product samples lacking. So they went back to the drawing board with her. While the delay was unfortunate, I didn't mind waiting a little longer if it meant that I would be getting a better Chitara. And maybe I'm being extremely biased, or looking at her through a lovelorn boy's eyes, but the end result is pretty close to perfect. So yes, I complete my cats and my heart is content with Chitara finally on my shelf. Next up is Fans Toys Chomp. I just recently messed around with this guy again, and I have to say, he still holds up very well. This guy is an all-around solid release from Fans Toys. And like I mentioned in the previous part, one of my most eagerly anticipated toys of the year, as he finally completed my Decepticon Masterpiece Headmaster's team. And he transforms into a giant robot alligator. What else could a toy collector ask for? Now while Chomp fell a couple places to number 4, the next 2 entries actually leapfrogged him to take the 3rd and 2nd slot. Previously, I lumped in Super 7's Ultimates Mumra, the Ever-Living, and Monkeyon together as one entry. Let's call it Master and Servant. But in the name of fairness, for this installment, I decided to give them their own respective spots. I got Mumra because I felt that he was necessary for a proper Thundercats display, not because I was a big fan. But this guy instantly won me over the moment I got him out of the box and in hand. Mumra has a presence that outshines almost every action figure in my collection, as he literally stands a head or two over everything else. Just as his namesake goes, it's pretty safe to assume that Mumra the Ever-Living will be ever-present in my final top 10 of 2022. But as great as Mumra is, this is a rare case in where the henchman simply outmatches the master. He may not be as massive, but Monkeyon is a masterfully sculpted and designed toy. I know I say this a lot, but he is just oozing with personality and he is easily the best mutant in the bunch. And that says a lot that given as a group, Slithe, Jackalman, and Vultureman all easily outshine any of the Thundercats in my opinion. And finally, still holding on to that number 1 spot is Black Mamba's take on the last night's Optimus Prime, Cybertron Cavaliers. The fact that this guy has been in this spot since the first installment is quite a testament to how great this toy is. Almost 8 months into my collection, and the shine and excitement has not faded from this guy. Cybertron Cavaliers remains the number 1 toy of 2022, and only time will tell if I'll get anything else in the next 3 months that will unseat him. Well, let's wait and see. And that should cover it for this part of my top 10 of 2022. So what about you guys? What are some of your favorite toy purchases of the year so far? Let me know in the comments below and tell me your story. Thanks for watching Stories from the Toy Shelf Redux. If you enjoyed this story, please click on the like button and subscribe to the channel to help me tell more. Until the next one.